But Mom, they're just a bunch of dead people. Who cares? What does studying about Napoleon have to do with me? Why do we have to learn about the Mongolians? I've heard all the Bible stories, so why are we studying them in history too? Everyone in history is dead, so what's the big deal? Why do we care when they died? I hate memorizing dates. Please, can we study something interesting? Do some science experiments? Diagram some sentences? Practice our multiplication. I hate history. It's boring. It's dull. They're just a bunch of dead people. I'm assuming that since you have chimed into this session that you or someone in your house is asking those or very similar questions. I understand. I felt the same way. When I grew up, I considered history to be the worst subject in school. I was never blessed with a teacher who saw history as anything more than just reading the chapter, memorizing the facts, memorizing the dates, and taking tests. That was what history meant to me. Yet, I grew up with parents who loved history. My dad constantly regaled us with history stories the entire time I was growing up. He was a walking history encyclopedia. We lived in Northern Virginia and were surrounded by museums and battlefields and monuments. Over the course of my growing up years, I visited every single one of those museums and battlefields and historical sites up and down the East Coast. I loved reading books, and the vast majority of the books I read were history-related books, biographies, classics, period fiction, nonfiction, etc. Between my parents' passion and my love for books, I knew a vast amount of history. Yet, if you had asked me, I would have told you that history was boring and useless. Why? Because school history was all about studying facts and taking tests. School history focused on memorizing dates and taking tests. School history involved sitting in class, reading together out of the textbook, answering the questions at the end of the chapter, and taking tests. School history gave you only the bare parts of the story and sanitized out all the blood and the guts and the gore. You didn't get it. School history separated history from geography and Bible and church history. They were not connected. School history focused primarily on American history. School history focused on very little on the rest of the world, and when it did, it was scattershot. It wasn't in any semblance of order, and most of the time we just studied American history. School history meant you had to take that 1 year of world history in high school, ancients to modern, as fast as you could go. That year involved an considerable amount of memorizing, facts, dates, events, and tests. School history didn't ever let you study American history at the same time that you studied world history. If history is only about memorizing facts, then why study it? Kids are right. They're just a bunch of dead people. Who cares what happened on a specific date in history? What in the world does that have to do with me? This was my struggle in school. I wasn't alone. Every time I talk about my disdain for school history, I get flooded with people who share with me their stories, their struggles. When I started homeschooling my children, I looked around for a different way to study history. I found a little guide that lined up history with literature. It was based on the classical method of studying history, which meant we started at the beginning, ancients. Over 4 years, we cycled through history and were able to watch history unfold. As we were studying history, we were reading literature books that lined up with the history. The focus was not on tests and memorization, but on reading the stories of history. We had some of the most amazing discussions while we cycled through. I watched my kids devour books related to history. They could not get enough. Because the reality is, dead people's stories can be really interesting to read. If you tell history right, you discover that history is brutal, mysterious, captivating, gruesome, funny, fascinating, shocking, and definitely mind-boggling. It was not until I was an adult and able to leave school history behind that I could freely admit that I love history. I just didn't love history the way it was taught in school. I love history when it is taught in order from beginning to end. I love history when it is taught as a story. I love history when the focus is on people with personalities. I love history when it tells the full story. I love history when it doesn't leave out the gritty and gory and shocking elements. I love history. Honestly, seriously, those kinds of stories are much more interesting than dull, mind-numbing facts. I love history because it allows me to look at those gritty and gory and shocking events of the past and use those events to teach children about politics and morality and life choices and sin and greed and power and corruption. I love history when I'm able to see God's story woven into the story of history from Genesis to present. I love history because it is the perfect platform to help children grasp their need for a Savior. I love history because it is captivating and mysterious and engaging. Yes, history is about a bunch of dead people, but those dead people have some seriously interesting stories to tell, and we can learn so much from learning about them. How? How can we make it captivating and mysterious and engaging? How can we take the boring, dull facts of history, the facts and the dates, and breathe life into it? Number one, and I'm going to give you a whole bunch of reasons. I'm probably not going to number them, but I'm going to start out with number one. Do history as a family. It is one subject where you can have everyone sitting at the table. Don't assign your kids to read the text alone. Here, you go into your cubby and you read this book, and then we'll take the test. Read the history together. Learn the history together. You will be amazed at how much you learn. Read with expression when you're reading. Read in different voices. Read as if you were a Russian reading or a German or a British person. Put in, even if your voices are silly, read with them because kids love that. Discuss, discuss, discuss. Those discussions are so life-breathing. Ask questions. Marvel. React. History is shocking. React. Let them know, wow, did you just read that? That's crazy what that king just did. Study history in order. Start at the beginning and let the children watch it unfold. Start with ancients. Start at creation. Go forward from that point. Don't stop history when you get to modern. After 4 years, go back. Start over. It is in that second cycle, the second time through, where the real light bulbs start coming on for kids. They start making connections and grasp the flow. Find a curriculum that weaves the Bible history into the ancient history. It's a blast as children begin to see those Bible stories come alive in the backdrop of ancient history. While you're reading, give them the task of illustrate something. Illustrate what I'm reading. Save those illustrations. Don't skip the gore and guts. It's real, and it's what kids love. They love that part. It happened. There are lessons to be found within the gruesome parts of the story, and I get that if you have a little second-grade girl, you don't want to get too guts and gory, but they still like to know some stuff, and you just have to be careful. But the older they get, especially boys, they want to know. They want to know what happened. As you're studying history, drown your students in history-related books. Let the children live the history by reading books that bring to life the history event or person, because it's all about story, and those books are going to bring the stories out. Let your children enjoy books on their grade level, but also let them savor the picture books and the easier readers. Picture books about history are some of the best books out there. It is a rare child who won't want to look at the pictures and enjoy them. Read books aloud to your children. Reading aloud to your kids and enjoying the stories together is an amazing way to breathe life into history. Listen to audiobooks in the car, right before bed, while waiting at appointments. Audiobooks are a great way to immerse in history. Have a movie night based on the history you are doing. Bonus, if you want your kids to get work done that week, then say you get your work done and you get to participate in our movie night based on the history that you're doing this week. Find YouTube videos to come alongside your study. There are thousands of videos you can watch for just about every single event in history. You have to be careful. You can't just let your kids just go wild, because a lot of YouTube videos, even history videos, are not appropriate for kids. There's some racy stuff in there. So make sure you know what they're watching, and also watch what they're watching after the video is over, because a lot of times things pop up or the next video isn't appropriate. Before you read the text, that's when you could watch the movie or the YouTube video, or afterwards. Either way is a cool way to do it. Hold debates. Let your children hash out the history issues. Give them the right to argue. Kids love to argue. Well, history is a great way to say it is appropriate to argue when it comes to history. Let's argue these facts. Compare and contrast. You can compare and contrast so many things in history. Compare and contrast is one of my favorite tools. Compare and contrast the philosophies or the religions. Compare and contrast your faith with the faith of the people that you're studying. You can compare and contrast laws from different countries. You can compare and contrast governments. You can compare and contrast rulers. You can compare and contrast that son, that king and his son, and the difference in their rules. You can pick a Christian worldview question from history and use it for your family devotions or dinner time discussion. You can create game questions out of the discussion questions. Play Jeopardy or something similar. My students at the co-op, they love playing Jeopardy with the questions. You can assign reports to write. Okay, they might not think that's too much fun. Who wants to do reports? But you can liven it up by having them dress up as a character, or reenact a battle, or create a PowerPoint, or write a skit, or eat food they would have eaten, or make graphics, or whatever else that they can think of to make their report come alive. You can have them pick their favorite character out of the week and act that figure out in charades. So this is the character, and everybody has to figure out who they are trying to act out. They can pick a subject they like most in the week and do some research and share with the family something that they learned that wasn't in the book. They can go through the textbooks and look at the pictures and find out who drew them and the story behind them. As you're studying history, study geography alongside it. I give all of my students a black and white Painless Learning placemat that has the map on the front, the colored map on the front. On the back is a black and white map that you can use with dry erase markers. We use those to draw and write in as we're studying the history. We're marking on those. We're writing the countries, the dates. We're drawing little symbols for who attacked who and all of that. It's a great way to get them engaged in the history while you're reading it. You can memorize the bodies of water, the oceans, the seas, the rivers. You can memorize the countries, the water, the landforms. You can make salt dough maps or use Play-Doh to create the map or the region that you're studying at that time. You can do notebooking. You can notebook the population or the religion or the size of the country, the elevation, landforms, and all of those things in geography. You can learn and remember the countries that you encountered throughout that year. So if you're studying medieval history, you can choose to learn all the countries of Europe. Or if you're learning ancient history, you can learn all the countries of Asia. Modern history, you can learn all the countries of Africa. You can pick a continent. You can make a flag book and learn all the flags of that continent, or all the state flags, country flags. You can have globe wars. You can call out a country or body of water and have the children race on the globe to find them first. You can get one of those globe balls, a blow-up ball, and toss it around the room and have the children find the country that has been called out. These are tons and tons of geography that you can do to make it come alive and to make it fun. You can go on the internet and let them play games that relate to geography. Stack the States is a great game for U.S. states. There's tons more out there. You can pick a country that's been studied that year and you can go in deep. You can learn about the people, their culture, their language, their food, the games they play. You can have a country culture day. You can dress up like the people, play games, eat food. You can do crafts together. You can play cultural games. You can recreate toys or games from an era or culture. You can feast at home or go on a field trip to a restaurant or market that corresponds with the culture that you're studying. You can go on field trips. You can go to museums. You can find places where the guide is in character to the point where they invite you to ask questions and they can only respond with the knowledge that they have as that character. Those are awesome museums that if you can find one of those to go to. You can make timelines. They can either cut and paste the figures and put them where they belong, or they can draw the figures and create an art timeline. They can put their timelines in a book, or they can put them up on a wall. You can review the timeline as you go through each week. You can build. You can use Legos or blocks or cardboard or boxes or outside material, and you can build a fort, or you can build a catapult, or you can build a castle, or you can build a battering ram, or a log cabin, or a pyramid, or anything else historical you can build. You can have building contests. You can take Legos and you can recreate the battles or the scenes of it. You can make a puppet show. You can recreate the event or battle using your socks or sticks or real puppets. You can recreate a soldier's uniform or a lady's dress or a worker's attire. You can go shopping. You can create a replica of storefronts from any era, and you can stock it with appropriate tools from a trade or wares for sale, and you can sell your wares to the other members of your family. You can journal a day in the life of this person, a day in the life of that person. You can mummify a chicken. You can create a wanted poster. It could be for a good character, a bad character. There's so many tyrannical people in history, and you could create all kinds of wanted posters for the tyrants of history. You can research the laws of the land. You can compare and contrast those laws. You can compare and contrast them to our laws in America. You can create a collage of events, people's events, settings, attire, transportation, and you can from a whole time period, you can just make a collage of all up to show or display that time period on like a poster board. You can make dioramas from an event. So you can pick an event like the Pilgrim's Landing, and make a little diorama, a shoebox diorama of that event. You can play What Was I Thinking? So you can choose a historical figure in the time period in which you're studying, and you can record what you might, if you were them, what you were thinking right before their major event happened. So you can think about, what was Julius Caesar thinking right before he crossed the Rubicon River? Or what was John Hancock thinking right before he signed the Declaration of Independence? You can be a servant for a day, or a sailor for a day, or a queen for a day, or a knight for a day. You can make crossword puzzles and word searches with all the different, based on the words and the things that you learned that week. You can ask, what would you do if, and let them put themselves in the shoes of the person or people they're studying. You can cartoon it. You can have them make cartoons or comic strips. You can film it. You can do storyboards. I said I would give you 50 ways to breathe life into history, and instead I gave you well over 65. 65 plus ways to make history fun, engaging, exciting, thought-provoking, and anything but dull. If you go on our website, Biblioplan, you can find even more ideas, tips, and tricks for making history fun, for taking all of our products and increasing them, making history come alive. Have fun, be willing to engage your kids, breathe life, be inspired, go forth and conquer.